Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about building permits as a leading indicator and how actually effective it acted as a leading indicator going back to the 2008 recession. That in just a minute. We have four different categories of building permits. We have the overall number, which is the headline number. We have the red line here, which represents building permits for 5 units or more. The yellow line, which represents 2 to 4 units, and then the green line, which is single family units. Now, a building permit is, uh, of course, created before a building or a house or any type of construction is started, and that's why it's considered to be a leading indicator. By the way, the white histogram bars in the background show us the S&P 500, and this goes from 2022 through present day. And we can see as the stock market hit recent swing highs, January of 22, and moved to the downside. Notice the green line in particular. That's the single family units building permits. Those are all the permits that were taken out to build single family structures. That really sold off. And what we're going to see is this is actually the most volatile component of this grouping of economic indicators. The yellow line, the 2 to 4 units, does not move as much, and then the 5 units or more, which represents more industrial or more investor type of construction units, that moves down after the fact. Now, here we can see this goes back to 2006 through 10. Now, the stock market was chugging along, making the new highs around 2007, and we see the building permits dropped off dramatically. Now, this is on a year-over-year basis. This measures the rate of decline from June to June, July to July, so on and so forth. Notice 2006, as the stock market moves up to highs in '07, the green line completely collapses and moves down faster than the yellow line, which is 2 to 4 units, or the red line, which is the 5 or more units. Use the 5 or more units as a confirmation that the market's really moving to the downside. Now, notice we hit those very big lows March of '09 as the S&P 500 hit lows, almost at 700. Notice how the green line, the single family units, then reversed and shot up higher faster than all the others. We'll see that the single family units number is usually the leading indicator of all leading indicators. Now here we see the blue background is the S&P 500. This goes from 2006 through present day, and we can see the red line represents the 5 or more units. The white line is the single family units. Now, what this in particular shows is, for example, the single family units as a percentage of all leading indicator. I'm sorry, of all building permits. The 5 units or more, the red line represents 5 units as a percentage of all building permits. So the way we read this is as follows. Take a look at the left-hand side of the chart in 2007. The white line spiked down. That shows us that as a percentage of all building permits, the single-family units, the white line, completely collapsed. It shows the greatest rate of decline in the building permits coming into that 2000 recession was the single-family units. Think of single-family units as, normal the normal housing market, what we would expect. We buy one house, we go out there and contact, a builder, a contractor, and, we get a house built. That is what the white line represents. And that's why it's so volatile, because it's connected to the average investor, to the average home buyer. The 5 units or more, that's considered more an investor level, and they may not be as reactive to, stock market pull downs, etc. Now, you look at this chart, you say, well, in 2007, 2008, does it mean that the 5 units or more as a percentage of all the building permits moved up? Well, not necessarily. This is the same chart, but this actually shows the number of single family units. A prior chart showed us single family units as a percentage of all building permits. This is the actual number, and it's represented in thousands. So if you look at the left-hand axis, we hit these highs of 1800. That's 1800 times 1,000. Now notice in 2005 we hit that very significant high and then absolutely collapsed. Something happened around 2005 that caused the beginning of this housing sell-off. Now the red line also moved down to the downside, but not nearly as much. On the white line, we went from 1800, it's actually 1800 times 1,000, but for our purposes, 1800 down to less than 400. So we had a much, much more rapid decline in the single family units. The 5 units or more also declined, but it did not decline at the same rate as the single family units. And that's why the prior chart shows us that the single family units, as a percentage of all building permits, declined that much faster. Now we see black histogram bars in the background. That's the S&P 500. This is from 2005 through 2010. The white line is the single family units. And what this shows us is the number of single family units, for example, as a percentage of its 1 year max. So what was the most amount of single family units, building permits that were issued in the past year? Well, if the white line is at 100%, it means that is the most. That's the most single family units over the past year that were issued. But as the white line declines, we see that now we're issuing 90%, 80%, 70%, and eventually we hit these lows 2008, only 50% of the overall building permits. I think this chart is important to show because the number of building permits will change over time. Populations change and, the purchasing power of investors will change. But we want to see how much of building permits declined from the recent swing high. Now, the red line represents a 5 units or more as a percentage of its max, and notice the very, very deep decline. So ultimately, as a percentage drawdown, the investor level, the 5 units or more, these could be condominium complexes or townhouse complexes with 5 units or more, that had a much more significant downturn. We were looking at only 10 to 20% of what it was actually issued at one point. So it does show us a very, very dramatic decline. And notice how, again, the S&P 500 is a black histogram bars. It was trading at 1 year highs, more or less, all the way through late 2007. But notice the green line, how it really acts as a leading indicator. The building permits were trading at, well, not trading, but they were issued at less than 60%, a 45% decline off of its highs as of September 2006. If you recall, September 2006, nobody was talking about a recession. Nobody was talking about a housing crash, but the building permits had already pulled down that much. That's really remarkable how much the building permits led the stock market and the housing market correction. And that's very simply because in the lifeline of a house being built, the first thing that a builder will go out there and is get the permit. They can buy the land, they get the permit, then they start construction. So before it's a new housing number, before that even is registered, we get the permit. The permit is the intent to build. Here we see the black histogram bars are the percentage of the total max, and this is present day. If you may ask, where are we now? Well, we see that the S&P 500 2021 was trading at 1 year highs. It sold off, and we're back up there. Now, the white line, again, the single family units, which seems to be very reactive, was down at the 60% level. Now, this is December, February of 2023. Now, since then, we've recovered, which is actually quite remarkable. Not exactly sure why. If anybody has any suspicion why that is, I have one guess, and that could be due to the lock-in effect. The lock-in effect is a phenomenon. We've mentioned it a couple times. We're gonna dive into this with a much greater amount of detail. But essentially, when you have a period of very low interest rates followed by a period of very high interest rates, a rapid increase in interest rates, it not only excludes those potential buyers out there, but also those potential sellers. They say, well, if I sell my house and I roll it over into another investment, I may have 10 years left of my mortgage. I don't want to take on a new 10-year mortgage. or a new 30-year mortgage for that matter, at new 7% interest rates. The new high interest rates are dissuading a lot of potential sellers from selling because they say, well, why don't I just stay in the house where I am right now and lock in, maintain my 0 or 1% interest rates, whatever that may be. Now, notice also the white line really broke to the downside around June of 2022. What happened in June of 2022 last year? June of last year? That's the beginning of the inverted bond market. That's when the 1 year bond crossed above the 10-year bond. And that's when the entire fixed income market and a lot of other macroeconomic indicators really, were turned on their head. I don't think it's coincidence that the decline in single family unit building permits also took a huge nosedive to the downside as that as that inverted bond market condition took place. So now we fast forward back to present day, and this is on a year-over-year basis. The white histogram bars in the background, that's the S&P 500. And then we see here the red line, 5 or more units, the green line, single family units, and the yellow line, 2 to 4 units. The 2 to 4 units are the least volatile. I wouldn't expect a lot of indication from those. But notice again what happened. We went on a year-over-year basis into negative territory. That was April of 22. June of 22, it accelerated to the downside. We hit a low of 40% decline on a year-over-year basis, January of 23, just about 7 months ago. But since then, single family units have skyrocketed higher. Maybe that has to do with the lock-in effect. Maybe it has to do with the fact that there's a very limited amount of inventory. A lot of home builder economists are talking about the fact that there's lack of inventory, and that's why the builders out there that say, well, if there's little inventory, maybe it's worthwhile for us to go out there and build more homes because although interest rates are high, there's not a lot of inventory. Maybe there's still potential buyers out there. But what's curious is that the 5 units or more, the red line, is making new lows. The most recent level, June of this year, that was the last report, about a 35% decline on a year-over-year basis on 5 units or more building permits. So maybe the home builder out there, hoping to build a house and sell it to a single family residence, maybe they're hopeful, but the investor class out there, building units that are 5 units or more, condominiums or townhouse complexes, maybe they see something different, in the tea leaves, and maybe that's why the building permits are declining at such a rapid succession. We hope this has been helpful. We look forward to seeing you back soon.